It's about 5.5 to 6 hours from the capital Kiev towards the east. It is a difficult, while it's a very, very picturesque area in eastern Ukraine, borders Russia. There are a lot of sympathies with Russia in that area. A large number of Indian students study medicine there. There are multiple medical colleges. It's also the industrial hub of this country, where you have a lot of military hardware, military armament made. IT sector is very big, and that is why a lot of Indians also work in the IT sector in and around Kharkiv. When we went there, Indian students were preparing to leave, but some of the Indian students India Today spoke to, and they did not want to speak on camera because they feared that the university may not take too kindly to it. They said that their main aim was to get their certification. First year and second year medical students, it's much easier, but when you're in the final year, your certification, your internship, your practicals, all of that, you have to be here for it before you can get your certificates and before you can get your degree and you can start practicing. And that is why MBBS students were extremely reluctant. Senior MBBS students were extremely reluctant to leave until there was clarity whether the classes are going online. And that time there was some confusion. Again, when we spoke to Indian officials in the Ministry of External Affairs, they said that they were working, they were talking to the government. They were working with the government here to ensure that classes went online. I also want to bring in, Polemy, stay with me. I also want to bring in India Today's executive editor, Shiv Arur, for more on this story. Shiv, this is extremely, extremely tragic. We've lost an Indian student to shelling in Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine, Shiv.
Gaurav, absolutely devastating update coming in from Kharkiv right through this morning. We've been talking about how Kharkiv is seeing the worst front of what is actually happening in Ukraine right now. And it is truly, truly so tragic to report first Indian casualty in Ukraine is an Indian student, an innocent Indian student has lost his life in eastern Ukraine. This is in the Kharkiv city, which is northeastern Ukraine, a city that is under attack very, very visibly. We understand that this young student, a fourth-year medical student, was in some kind of a line, at a supermarket or somewhere when shells began to land, and he lost his life there. Let me also make it very clear, Gaurav, that this student, who we understand hails from Karnataka, we're not releasing his pictures, until they are confirmed, by the authorities on the ground. India Today will not play with the emotions of families. We will only do that once that information is completely confirmed. But before that, I'd like to tell you that Kharkiv has been seeing the worst fighting, the worst shelling. We've seen a cruise missile attack happen from there just a short while ago. We are awaiting information, a confirmation from the Ministry of External Affairs, is the latest that we're getting in on the death of that student. Terrible tragedy. And let me tell you, there are more Indian students at this point of time. It is a study center. It's Ukraine's second largest city. We're awaiting more information. Very, very big tragedy going.
It indeed is very tragic, Shiv, and the unfolding tragedy also points to the fact that there are a large number of Indian students who are still trapped in different parts of Ukraine. Very difficult for them to get to the nearest railhead, roadhead, and then travel safely out of harm's way to Lviv or other borders. Shiv, on ground zero, I can tell you, at least in the past 1 week, extremely difficult to get either buses or taxis or to come out of universities, especially when there are militia around, especially when there are multiple forces with weapons on ground looking at everyone with acute suspicion. And of course, these area domination weapons that are being used, artillery fire, missile fire, rocket fire, these are area weapons that can hit anyone, and which is where unfortunately this youngster studying medicine was caught in an artillery fire, we are told, in a food line at a supermarket. Food, again, acute shortage, and that is where these children are also getting desperate. Very, very difficult to arrange for these children to be evacuated safely. I've been speaking to a number of university contractors, if I may, or arrangers, those who arrange medical seats, those who look after these children, those who arrange their food and shelter, and they are saying it's an absolute nightmare, Shiv, arranging for their evacuation to safer areas because there are no buses available. No bus driver wants to risk life, limb or property ferrying people, even though they're willing to pay double or triple the amount. That's a huge crisis that people are facing, and these students themselves at their own initiative are hiring 15-seater, 17-seater, 20-seater buses to be able to ferry them out to Lviv or to other borders. But that's also very, very difficult despite paying an exorbitant price. And that is why some of these students, Shiv and Polemy, are now trying to come here to the station and then take a train out, which for now, we are told for students, no money is being charged. They are just being ferried out of this area. But very tragic for this student. And Shiv, do we have a bigger picture in terms of what the government is planning for others who are trapped inside Ukraine? Or is the government saying, at your own risk, at least get to the border and we'll look after you beyond the borders? There's not much that the government can do in a strife-torn country now.
You know, Gaurav, until this point, until this particular tragic news break, things appeared to be in control. With the death of this one student, the true dangers, the true volatility of what is happening has come roaring out. Many things have completely changed in the last 20 minutes. Whether, collateral damage is happening, yes, it definitely is happening. This is no longer about claims and counterclaims. Whether civilian areas are being targeted, clearly they're being targeted. If an Indian student has died, that claim has also been completely debunked. There's no more misinformation or claims and counterclaims. The fact that you've got 4 ministers on different land borders, an advisory asking students to get out of Kiev and Kharkiv as quickly as they can, suddenly this entire situation becomes much more, much more unreliable, unpredictable and dangerous. Where are students going to go if they don't know where to go, if they, run the risk of, coming in the line of rockets or shells landing from the Russians, since they are clearly targeting civilian areas and, for God's sake, supermarkets as well. So this entire situation has gone from being something with a semblance of control to one where we have seen a person lose their life. I want to send out a message to all of our viewers and especially to parents watching that we understand how devastating this news is. We understand how worried you are if you've got your children who are still in Ukraine right now. I promise you that India Today will bring you only the most reliable facts. We will not report anything until it is totally verified here on India Today. We understand the emotions of an entire country with an Indian student having died. You've heard the voices of these students, Gaurav, over the last many, many days and weeks. The advisories asking them to stay put, to get to a railway station. All of that now kind of just evaporates because one person has lost his life, Gaurav. It's a terrible tragedy. We're awaiting more information. The isn't with the family in Karnataka as well. We are awaiting more information.
Oh, absolutely. And Shiv, this fear is very real. I've spoken to a number of students. We've played out their sound bites. We've played out how they've walked, at least in Kiev, all the way from the Bogomolets Medical College, all the way up to the railway station. They've braved militia themselves and traveling this entire area. But the situation is only, unfortunately, likely to deteriorate from this point on. We have Major Samar Tur joining us on this broadcast, a veteran, a combat veteran, a former UN peacekeeper. Major Tur, in such a situation, what can people do in conflict where it's virtually a free-for-all? It's like every man for himself, but how can children get out of harm's way as safely as possible in these circumstances?
Now, in these circumstances, basically, Shiv, what is to be done is, I've been guiding these children for the past 4 days. Now, the only issue was that I was in touch with the students in Kharkiv till yesterday afternoon. And I kept insisting to them that if you look logically and tactically, the forces are going to move in from Sumy and Kharkiv. So it is better that they left yesterday during daytime. But what the students told me was that their parents have been calling them up and telling them to stay back in the hostel where they are and not to listen to anybody else and not to move. So as a result, I even landed up talking to one of the contractors who belongs to a company called Bob Trade. So I spoke to these people and they themselves were clueless. There was a lot of chaos and then there was a curfew imposed, but eventually there were still buses being arranged. Now, during these hours, what I can suggest to all students is to move in a group by any means possible, on foot or by vehicle or by small cars. Just move away from the conflict zone in the opposite direction. And secondly, to be in groups at all times and to maintain communication. And the moment you reach or meet other Indians on the way, you make a bigger group and you keep moving. But no movement is supposed to be carried out during night, because at night, any moving object will be a threat to anybody with a weapon. So I told them that please do not move at night, move during day, first light, organize and arrange a bus collectively. Get your money together, collectively board it and move away.
All right, Major Toor, this is Preeti Chaudhary just coming in. My colleague Gaurav Sawant continues to report out of Kiev. The advice that you're giving, Major, right now is that students move in a group. But what is also coming in that this, young student, his picture we are putting up, it's verified right now. He hails from Karnataka. We're going to give out details as well. It's tragic, but was also trying to make his way on his own to safety. The option should be right now to move together in groups or stay where you are and stay safe in bunkers.
See, as of now, if there is a facility for them to get hands on any vehicle which is moving out of the town, they should quickly hire that vehicle by giving money at whatever rates possible and just leave the area. Because once the Russian forces come across and go, it will be an urban warfare situation. There will be fights and storming of the buildings. There will be door-to-door combat. They will be hunting down the Ukrainians and there is going to be a lot of chaos. So that is what I am still advising, that till it is daytime right now, you should move during day. And the moment you feel it is going to get dark, you take a halt at a place which is at the outskirts of a city, which is not in a populated area, not to be within the city limits, because cities are the ones which are going to be overrun and occupied by tonight or by tomorrow morning.
Now, Kharkiv is facing the biggest brunt of Russian forces, completely being bombed. But I want to ask you one quick question, because you've been in touch with students in Kharkiv. Right now, if you come up to a ballpark figure, most, coordinators with students are suggesting even now 3,000 to 4,000 Indian students are there. Am I correct?
Preeti, as far as I know, I was in touch with the students since last night. So as far as I know, the figure in Kharkiv, in a particular hostel, there were 400 students. There were boys and girls mixed. Then I tried to get in touch with students at Sumy, which was not made possible. So as of now in Kharkiv, as far as I know on ground, till last night, few hours back, there were 400 students who were stranded over there. And the name of the institution is, it's called 300 VN Karzin National University.
Sir, will you repeat that for us? Because we're going to take that down. And we're going to pass that on.
It is 300 VN Karzin National University.
All right, we're going to take those details down. Our producers are going to take those details down and we're going to forward those details, because you're giving incredible...
The contractor's name is Bob Trade. The company which is the contractor for these students is Bob Trade.
All right, sir. So, this is verified information. This is verified information that you're giving us, and we're going to forward the details that you have given us to the authorities right now, because you are saying that of what you know on your person, What you know, that over 300 to
Yes,
400
yes, these are
students are
verified,
stranded there, Indian students.
Preeti, these are verified details, and I think there is no time to lose because it is almost a SOS situation for the
Right.
students stuck in Kharkiv.
Major, stay on with me. I'm going to quickly bring in Shivarur into this conversation. Shiv, we're getting in verified details of at least 400 students. Major giving us those details. You know, can we put them together, forward them to the concerned authorities? Because 400 Indian students right now, verified, still stuck in Kharkiv. There would possibly be many, many more as well.
That's right, Preeti. A very important point that you've picked up. The list of students that Major Samarthur has shared with us has already been forwarded, to the authorities on the ground. They have taken cognizance of the fact that we've got a lot of Indian students on the ground. This horrible tragedy, the death of, a young medical student in Kharkiv has come as a huge blow because, like I said, until this time, Preeti, there was a semblance of hope and a semblance of calm that so far the students had, managed to, duck the real damage. There was a sense of, faith that the firing wasn't happening very close to them. Many of them had sent videos saying they heard, the shelling happening not very far from where they actually were. And now you see young Naveen Shekharappa, fourth-year medical student, has just lost his life in shelling while he was apparently in a supermarket line. This fully confirms collateral damage, the targeting of civilian areas, and what we've been saying since the start, Preeti, that Kharkiv is one of the worst affected places. Things have spiraled completely out of control in that city, and like you rightly pointed out, Naveen, the student who's lost his life, his family, the government is in touch with his family, but there are 400, at least 400 more Indian students who are in Kharkiv and who are not there out of choice, but they have nowhere to go. They don't know how to get out of there. And with shelling now taking the life of one student, I cannot imagine, the kind of fear that might have set in already on the student population there. Because, Preeti, all of these students are on WhatsApp and Telegram groups. They are in touch with each other. They're hearing news as it breaks. The death of the student, you can be sure, is news that has already reached all of these students on the ground in Kharkiv as well. If they are listening, if they are watching our coverage, the only thing we can tell them is, please try and stay calm at this point of time. The officials on the ground, the Ukrainian government, which is completely diverted in this huge attack by Russian forces, is going to probably try and do everything it possibly can. The Indian government has been in touch with the Russian government on the safety of Indian students. Remember, Preeti, just a couple of days ago, President Putin had made an assurance to Prime Minister Modi about the safety of Indian nationals on the ground. But clearly not enough has been done. Collateral damage, the targeting of civilian areas, whatever you might actually want to call it. The fact is, a young Indian student has lost his life in the crossfire.
It is heartbreaking to confirm, Shiv, is it not? We've been tracking, this crisis, this invasion for the last 6 days. This is as close as it's come home. We've suffered our first casualty, viewers, and we are very sorry to report this afternoon that a young 21-year-old student, he hails from Bengaluru, he hails from Karnataka. We've confirmed verified the details. Naveen from Bengaluru, Karnataka, has lost his life. He's 21 years old. The Ministry of External Affairs is in touch with his parents, and we are very, very sorry to confirm this massive tragedy that has come knocking from Kharkiv. Kharkiv being bombed from all sides right now is what we are getting to understand. It is a border town facing the full face of the Russian invasion brunt. And this story that we are breaking right now has hit home. It's come very, very close. Till now, we've been reporting this war as possibly an outsider, worrying for our students who are stuck here. We've suffered our first casualty today, and that has come in the face of the 21-year-old fourth-year medical student in Kharkiv, Naveen. He hails from Bengaluru, Karnataka. He was trying to make his way from Kharkiv to safety and fell collateral to shelling by Russian troops, is what we are getting to understand. The Ministry of External Affairs right now is in touch with Naveen Shekharappa's family. Tragic news. And at this point of time, I would reckon something will change in terms of how India is approaching the entire situation where our students are stuck with Russian authorities. If Shiv is still with us and if we still have our guest, Major Samarthur with us. Great. Major Samarthur, Are you still in talks with certain students who are stuck there? Many of them have been speaking with you. You know, there would be abject sense of panic right now. You know, to ask them to stay calm is an oxymoron, but that is all that we can do. What are you advising them?
I says, firstly, there was a team of 400 students at Mykolaiv near Odessa. So I have been successful in guiding them to be evacuated towards Moldova. And my previous UN colleagues are present in Ukraine. So I have interacted with them. And those students are in touch with those UN representatives at the Ukrainian office of the UN in Moldova. So they are reaching to safety there. Yesterday, 700 students from Kyiv have today successfully reached a place called Lviv. And from there, they are moving into Romania. Now, the important facts that I'm going to put across is very important for the students to take note. Firstly, please carry Indian flags. And if you're traveling in a vehicle, please, it should be prominently visible from the outside. So firstly, carry the Indian flags, number one. Number two, try and avoid carrying dead luggage. That means do not carry unnecessary luggage. 2 students can carry or share the luggage in one bag. Then water is very important. Kindly sip onto water only when you are extremely tired, because availability of water will be next to nil. So within 2 to 3 hours, you should just be able to sip once or twice on a little bit of water. Then food. Try to carry dry rations, something like chocolates, dry fruits, something like chewing gums or something sweet. You can dilute it with water and then also consume it. Then your clothing should be good enough to help you sustain in the open. In case if you're asked to sleep in the open, it's -4, -5 degrees. You should give priority to carrying good woolen clothes. Then the other thing is, you should be ensuring that your footwear has to be proper shoes. No slippers, no sandals, nothing which is not going to help you run properly. So you are supposed to ensure you're wearing proper shoes. Then thirdly, all your power banks should be charged and your mobiles should be used only when necessary. Now, these are the basic things that I have to tell the students. The second aspect, which I had a word with the student yesterday, that they had gone for an emergency to procure rations, of which one girl was actually filming. And there were 2 bandits, you could say, or robbers in the uniform, in a Ukrainian uniform. And they came, they snatched a phone, they took the money from her, and then later on they broke the phone in front of her. They looted the students and they ran off. So basically, what I'm trying to tell the students, do not trust anybody at face value. Kindly ask the official whether they are actually from a genuine Ukrainian forces or not. Please request them for the ID with politeness. That is all at the moment that I can tell you, Preeti.
Important points, and what we are going to advise all those parents who are watching this broadcast. We have a lot of worried parents who've been tuning in. If you're going to pass this information on to your children who are stuck in Ukraine, that would be great. Please do so. Appreciate you giving us those pointers, Major Samar.
One more thing.
Yes, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Those who are intending to stay back, kindly put proper locks and barricade the doors, but ensure you are putting Indian flags which are clearly visible at the entrance of the buildings and at the rear side of the building. There should be proper prominent Indian flags if possible. If your rooftop is flat, go and put a Indian flag on the rooftop as well, so as to avoid any Hepter or any aircraft bombing that particular building.
All right, Major Tur, important points that you're giving in. A lot of our heart goes out to the parents whose children are right now stuck in Ukraine, who are possibly tuning in, to this conversation right now. All we can ask you is, as we continue to report verified information, viewers, if you're watching this, take these pointers, give it to your children there, because this is a state of war and your child is right now stuck in that state of war. And where India is concerned, this is now hit home. this is possibly our war now, where we've suffered our first casualty. Till now, we were reporting this war as outsiders, trying to get our citizens out, but we have suffered our first big casualty. Earlier on, there were confirmations, there were assurances that were given from the Russian side to India that there will be safe passage, but right now, in terms of collateral, there is always collateral when there is war. Our first casualty India has suffered in the form of this young 21-year-old life. 21-year-old Naveen from Bengaluru, Karnataka, is no more. He passed away when he was trying to make his way from where he was to a train station. He fell collateral to shelling, and we are extremely sorry to confirm this. I want to cut across to our external affairs editor. Geeta Mohan is joining me from the newsroom. Geeta, till now, there was a sense of panic. We were reporting this war from the outside. We've suffered our first casualty. This is, as close to home as it gets. Will there now be a change in tactics in terms of India speaking to Russia? Will we see anything different right now?
Well, there has been absolute engagement from day one since the evacuations began. But just a while ago, Foreign Secretary Harsh Shringla, Preeti, had summoned the Russian ambassador, as also the Ukrainian envoy was called in. And the concerns with regards to providing safe passage to Indian nationals, Indian students in particular, was discussed. India continues to demand that both sides at least ensure that Indian nationals get a safe passage for evacuating from either side. We know that everybody is moving westwards, but India is also planning to ensure that if it is possible, and because they are in a border town of Kharkiv bordering Donbass and then Russia, if they can be moved from Donbass into Russia and flown out of Russia into Delhi, so into India. So that's also an area that is being explored, given the fact that Ukraine completely is under siege and there is no public transport available. So the students who are stuck in Kharkiv are not being able to move up to the north, to the western front, and if that does not happen, they cannot really cross the border on the western front of Ukraine. So concerns are really rising over here, and the Indian administration trying very hard to ensure that safe passage is provided by the Ukrainian administration as they can, as also by the Russian administration, to ensure that Indian nationals are moved to safety.
So those efforts being bolstered right now. Geeta, does the Indian authority have an exact number on the students that are stuck in Kharkiv? Because right now, Kharkiv, being a border town, is facing the full brunt of the Russian assault.
Well, we do not have exact numbers, but in terms of the larger picture, Preeti, sources telling us that about 9,000 Indian nationals have been brought out of Ukraine, and quite a few of them are still in safer areas, which is the western side of Ukraine. There are still a significant number in Kharkiv and the bordering towns, but we do not have an exact number, although they're not small in number. What we're also given to understand is that the entire city is under siege, so nobody really comes out of the bunkers unless and until they really have to come out for essential grocery shopping, or for that matter to source these groceries. We do not know whether shops are open to really buy them, but to source these groceries. And in all probability, that was one of the reasons why some of these Indian students had forayed out. We again have to wait to get a few of the friends of this Indian student who lost his life to really get a real sense of what really transpired, what really happened, and how was he really shot down when he was just an Indian national trying to get coming out of his apartment, his room, or even the bunker to get some essential supplies. So right now we're just awaiting details, but it certainly is one of the most disturbing news coming in for India from Ukraine, and things do not look really good for India when it comes to the evacuation itself from these regions, although evacuation is continuing on the western front. But unless and until the students on the eastern side get some decent public transport, stepping out is an absolutely dangerous proposition.
With me, we're getting multiple unconfirmed reports on what exactly went down in terms of how Naveen fell in terms of collateral to shelling by Russians. We still don't know what really happened, but what we can confirm is that Naveen is dead, and he passed away when he was making his way out of where he was residing in Kharkiv. There are multiple theories on where he was going. We're going to try and get a confirmation of that. But Geeta is with me. Geeta, what is the information right now available with the Ministry of External Affairs? And when did this happen? Are they in touch with his parents? Clearly, we do know that they are in touch with his family.
Well, as of now, we know that, yes, the parents have been informed. We're also given to understand that certain family members have spoken to officials in the Ministry of External Affairs, trying to ascertain details as to what happened. And it's the reason why, Preeti, I'm saying that in all probability, the student stepped out to procure or to source essential supplies. But a very unfortunate incident, because things are looking quite dire in the city of Kharkiv, and there have been advisories to stay in, but there's only that much that anyone can do when it comes to survival. And so again, we have to wait to get an account from the ground on what really happened, or an official word from the Ministry of External Affairs, which will take a while to get. But in the meanwhile, the fact that an Indian life has been lost in Ukraine really makes the situation and the gravity of the situation much higher for India. This even as more efforts are being made to send more flights. Ministers have gone down to various bordering states of Ukraine to ensure that the evacuation is a smooth process. But that certainly is not enough if students are stuck on the Eastern Front. The most important thing that India is demanding right now and is looking at is engaging Ukraine and engaging Russia to provide safe passage. So the primary demand right now is safe passage to safer places. And that really is something that has not come through. It is not today that they've been speaking about it. They've been engaging Russia and Ukraine for a while now to ensure they provide safe passage to Indian students. So again, we'll have to wait and see what really comes out of the meetings that took place today and are taking place in Moscow and in Kyiv as well. But certainly a very serious scenario for India.
All right. Okay. You know that, Geeta, stay on with me. As India is stepping up its efforts to evacuate Indian students, we are very sorry to confirm that India has suffered its first fatality. A young student by the name of Naveen, 21-year-old, was traveling to a train station, and he succumbed collateral to Russian shelling, is what we're getting to understand. The Indian government is in touch with his parents, but this is as close home that this war has hit till now. It's day 6. We were covering this from the outside, but this is as close as it gets. India still trying to step up, ramp up its efforts to speak to Russian counterparts, to Ukrainian counterparts, to ensure safe passage for our students. Shiv Arur is also joining me right now from our war room. Shiv, Kharkiv, a border town facing the full force of the Russian forces, and sadly to confirm, we've suffered our first casualty today.
First casualty, and I hope the only casualty. This is bad enough. Everything has changed in the last couple of hours since we've broken the story of Naveen Shekharappa's tragic death. He died in shelling while he was trying to get out of Kharkiv. Let me just quickly show you where Kharkiv is. It happens to be the second largest Ukrainian city. Now, this is Kiev. This is the capital city of Ukraine. That's where a lot of siege action is happening. This is Kharkiv. As Preeti just said, it's very close to the border with Russia. Some parts of it have already been taken over by the Russians. The battle for Kharkiv is turning out to be one of the most viciously fought battles. It's about 480 kilometers away from Kiev. Desperate attempt by hundreds of students who continue to be in Kharkiv at this point of time. Young Naveen Shekharappa, the first and hopefully only casualty. Our deepest condolences to his family and his friends at this devastating time as we bring you this news. And I want to tell you, we are not going to dramatize the tragedy. This is terrible. This is bad enough. We will only bring you the facts. The government is in touch right now with young Naveen's parents. Let's go straight across now to Kyiv, where India Today's Rajesh Pawar has been reporting. Rajesh, this entire invasion, this conflict has just taken a terribly, terribly tragic turn. It has hit home in India. The various things that the Indian government has been doing to get people out, jolted now by the death of a young Indian student in Kharkiv, Rajesh.
Shiv, I agree with you absolutely. It's absolutely tragic and heartbreaking to know that an Indian student has died there. Such a young life lost. But I just say this to the students and the parents and whose children are still stuck here. Please move out of your houses today. Try to move to the train station, nearest train station. There are trains still moving. There are private cars still allowed to move on certain highways. Indian Embassy has been making you aware of all those things. Please make use of it, because after 24 hours, the situation is going to be even more grim, and it is going to be even more difficult to evacuate you from tomorrow onwards. So please move to the train stations, nearest train stations. Trains are moving. Additional trains are being placed, and even taxis are moving on certain designated highways. Please use them. You'll be safe. Russia has promised not to target vehicles on certain highways. Please use those highways. Reach Kyiv somehow or directly to Lviv. That's my appeal to the students who are still stuck there. Shiv.
How many students, we are aware that, maybe in excess of 300 Indian students are still in Kharkiv right now. What are you hearing? How many students still in Kharkiv? We've been hearing from a number of them saying it's really difficult to get out of that city because of the intensity of the attacks that are being seen over there.
Shiv, I have personally helped here hundreds of students who were stuck in Kharkiv and other places to reach Kyiv and then to board a train yesterday. About 1,500 Indian students have left Kyiv yesterday for the border town of Lviv and other border areas. From there, they would be evacuated to other foreign countries. There is still time to leave. I will just say that things are getting more and more difficult. So try and leave as early as possible. Indian Embassy has issued helpline numbers. Even I have put my number on social media if somebody's stuck. We will try our best to help you out and try to get you out from here. Over to you, Shiv.
Also with me, Rajesh, he's been in touch. He's based in India. He's a former UN peacekeeper. He's been in touch. Just like you, he's been in touch with Indian students in Kharkiv, in Odessa, and certain other places. Let's keep Rajesh on our screen as well. Major Samar Tur, coming to you now. Are you still in touch with students there? Are you hearing more about what may have happened? We understand that young Naveen was in some kind of a line trying to get out of Kharkiv. It's shocking to hear that he's lost his life. We've been seeing images of the devastation in Kharkiv. It's become the most intense, hotspot of this conflict. What have you heard about what happened, Major Samar?
See, Shiv, right now, the main confusion that has been happening is that since yesterday, the peace talks that were open, a curfew was imposed. So basically, there was a lull in battle during those few many hours. Now, during that few many hours, I was telling majority of the students to hire a vehicle, hire buses, and move out with the help of the contractors. But those who are now stuck back were with the notion that nothing or no bombing has taken place today morning as well. So they would have probably ventured out to get rations for themselves. Because I spoke to the students, so their parents are very worried. And they said, instead of moving about, it is better that you stay in the bunkers, you stay within the buildings. Now the issue is, Shiv, these children have run out of food. So the desperation levels are rising by the day. So they are now procuring food whenever they get to know that curfew has been lifted for a stipulated time period. But the main saving grace is that few of the students told me day before yesterday that the Russian forces had passed by their building and they had the Indian flag put. So none of the Russian soldiers came near the building or took cover near the building. Nothing like that was happening. So one message is really clear, that the Indian flag needs to be showcased clearly and prominently in whichever bunkers or buildings these students are staying put.
No, Major Samar, I'm just going to come to you in a moment to ask you what advice the students will be getting. There are 4 ministers who've reached the bordering areas, but there is still lack of clarity on what these students need to do. Parents are watching, so we have to be very, very careful and sensitive about the information we're putting out. We do not want to add to the anxiety. What can you add to a time when a young Indian innocent student has died in Russian shelling in that area? This is Kyiv. Ladies and gentlemen, viewer, this is Kyiv, which is the big capital city, the biggest city of Ukraine. 480 kilometers east of Kyiv is Kharkiv. It's very close to the border with Russia. That is the site of all of the most intense shelling that has taken place. Rajesh, you've been reporting on what's happening inside Kharkiv at this point of time. We saw that cruise missile attack on a government building, a lot of intense shelling, debris all around. The damage appears to be maximum in Kharkiv. And what has just happened with this young Indian student only confirms, that attacks are happening in civilian areas. Collateral damage is definitely happening.
Look, Shiv, it will increase in coming days. I don't want to create any sort of panic among these parents or the students, but they need to move out. They need to move out. And if they are not able to move out in next 12 to 14 hours, they must stay in bomb shelters. They need not stay in their apartment where they're staying. If they stay there, danger is very, very high. With regards to the situation in Kharkiv, what I have learned from my sources is that Kharkiv, the Russians have claimed that Kharkiv has fallen. Russians has taken over the city, they have run out of the city. Whereas the Ukrainian governor of Kharkiv says they are still holding on. So nothing is clear as of now. But one thing is very clear. For example, in Kyiv, the Russians have advised citizens of Ukraine in Kyiv to leave the capital city at the earliest in next 24 hours. This advisory has been issued by Russians to the Ukrainian citizens living in Kyiv today morning, which implies that from tomorrow there might be missiles landing into civilian areas and in residential complexes. Probably the same thing what is happening right now in the east of Ukraine, be it in Kharkiv, be it in Mariupol, be it in Odessa. Over to you, Shiv.
Major Samar, I want to ask you one thing. Without getting into too many technicalities about consultants and things like that, what should students who are in Kharkiv, who might be watching, and we know many of them are listening, what do they need to know? What is the advice that you can give them as someone who has been advising students and has managed to, guide many students to safety before this? What do the students who are in Kharkiv right now need to know? And let's remember that they are in total panic possibly right now after the death of one of them.
Okay, now see, this is very important, and to all the students who are watching this and parents, firstly, the concept of staying in bomb shelters. Now the thing is, bomb shelters are not those bomb shelters that we actually are talking about. These are basically general basements. Now the issue is, in today's warfare, the missiles which come in, penetrate the building, go right down to the basement, and then they go off. So my advice to all the students there who are in a makeshift basement and not a proper bomb shelter is to scatter yourselves in that particular apartment, but you have to stay away from all the windows. Number one. Number two, ensure your windows are covered with curtains and you barricade those windows with your beds by putting them upright against the windows, so that in case there is a blast wave or something happens, it is the bed, the curtain, which will take the impact of the glass pieces shattering and coming inside. Then, number two, be into the strong corners of a room. Number three, avoid switching on the light at night at all. In fact, try and conserve electricity, charge your power banks, charge your mobiles, because in the coming few hours, could be that communication is taken out. So your mobile will be like your torches. Then another point regarding that, kindly muffle your lights of your mobile phones. Cover it with 2 layers of handkerchiefs so that the light does not scatter or is not prominently visible from the outside, so that any of the Russian forces might suspect somebody hiding in the building. So best is to avoid being seen from the building to an outsider. Number two, be scattered and be at the strong corners of the room. Number four, try to be in the basement, but do not overcrowd it. Do not overcrowd it. And number five, you can still manage to stay hungry, but you cannot manage to stay thirsty. So conserve water. Drink only when you are extremely thirsty, because now you cannot afford the luxury of having water when you are still comfortable, when you want to eat, when you are not hungry. So now is the proper war scenario where you
Major
actually
Tool, just
adjust
stay with me.
yourself.
Very valuable information that you're providing. We're going to put that onto our screen in just a moment. Just want to update our viewers that Naveen Shekharappa, 21 years old, the Indian student tragically killed in shelling in Kharkiv city of Ukraine, hails from the Haveri district of Karnataka, which happens to be the same district where Chief Minister of Karnataka, Basavaraj Bommai, hails from. We understand that Chief Minister Bommai has just telephoned the family of young Naveen Shekharappa and had a word with them and offered his condolences. You know, all of these things seem so small right now in the face of a terrible, terrible tragedy. A young man from a family sent off to a faraway land to study medicine, come back and be a doctor perhaps, a bright future ahead, cut short in this terrible way as collateral damage in somebody else's war. He had nothing to do with it. He was an innocent student studying in Ukraine, cut down in shelling that's taken place. The Russian belligerence in Kharkiv has been writ large over the last few days, and as we've been telling you here on India Today, it is the city that has seen the worst damage since day one. It's a city that the Russians have been desperately trying to capture ahead of the big siege of Kyiv. We'll have our reporter from Karnataka in just a short while from now. Preeti, this horrible tragedy still sinking in. The death of 21-year-old Naveen Shekharappa. You can bet right now, Preeti, that the Indian government with officials on the ground have been jolted even further. There are ministers on the land borders. This has become exponentially a bigger situation for India as well.
Well, you're right, Shiv. Naveen Shekharappa, now India's face of the humanitarian crisis which is unfolding as we speak in Ukraine. We are very sorry to confirm our condolences with the family of this 21-year-old young student, life snuffed out, having absolutely nothing to do with the war. It wasn't his war. But today he becomes India's face of collateral, India's face to the humanitarian crisis which is unfolding in Ukraine. Yes, the Indian authorities would be jolted. What we are getting to understand is that now India is exploring the option of Indian student being given passage over to Russia and maybe being evacuated from there, because still now all of Indian students in Kharkiv, which is facing the maximum brunt right now of Russian forces, were trying to make their way to Kiev and then from Kiev going onwards and looking at evacuation. What we are getting to understand right now that through Operation Ganga, you have 4 ministers who are in 4 different borders trying to evacuate Indian students. There is another route which is being explored. Mind you, it's not right now green signaled yet, but there is a route which is being explored, as our external affairs editor Geeta Mohan tells us, which is trying to get students which are stranded in Kharkiv passage to Russia, and from there they could be evacuated, because mind you viewers, about 300 to 400 confirmed in a single unit. There could very well be more students which are stuck right now in the city of Kharkiv as it faces the full force of the Russian army right now. You can see the kind of damage at display, civilian buildings being attacked, and that young face that you see on your television screen, and we're so sorry to report that, becomes India's face to this humanitarian crisis which unfolds in Ukraine. What we can tell our viewers is that the External Affairs Ministry, as we speak, is in touch with the family of this young students. Visuals already coming in, tragic visuals coming in from Haveri, that is the hometown of this young 21-year-old Naveen. The Chief Minister, Mr. Bommai of Karnataka, is in touch with the family. There is plausible anger, and one can completely understand the frustration of parents who are right now in India with their children stuck there. We are trying to disseminate verified information. You heard what are the basic checklist, or what is the basic checklist that each student who is stuck, especially in combat zones like Kharkiv, should have. You heard the major right there. If you're a parent, please do give that information out to your child who is stuck in Ukraine. Once again, our condolences lie with the family of this young student. He absolutely had nothing to do with this war, but now becomes India's face to this humanitarian crisis. This war has now hit home, it's hit close. I'm sure India will be ramping up its efforts. It's already on. The process is already on, but clearly would be ramping up the entire effort to put pressure in terms of safe passage for evacuation for our students stuck in Ukraine. I want to cut across right now to my colleague Nagarjun, who's joining us live. Naga, the details coming in, you know, the fine print of it all, the face remains of Naveen Shekharappa, 21-year-old student becoming India's face of this conflict. But details coming in. He hails from Haveri, from Karnataka. The Chief Minister of Bengaluru Karnataka has already spoken to his parents or to his family. What more can you add?
Well, Naveen is from Haveri district of Karnataka. He was studying in Kharkiv University. He was doing an MBBS course is what we are told. And he recently got in touch maybe a week or back or something with his family. That's the preliminary information that we have got. Earlier, when the ME had confirmed that there was an Indian student who succumbed in the battle today, and we didn't know still it was from Karnataka as well. The Chief Secretary of Karnataka then spoke to the ME officials, and then finally we got confirmation that it was indeed Naveen from Karnataka, Haveri district, and from a small place called Chalgere in Ranebennur Taluk. It is just above the north of Davangere, south of Haveri district. The Chief Minister of Karnataka hails from the same district. Mr. Basavaraj Bommai already spoke to the family of Naveen, consoled them, and he said it's a terrible time. He has no words to express, and he said the government will stand by the family and do everything to make sure the mortal remains or the body can be gotten back to India as soon as possible. We still have to get details as to what exactly the family spoke to him. When was last time the family spoke to him? Did anyone else? How did they get to know? Did the friends inform? What preliminary information that we are picking up? Still, we'll have to confirm through the family is that when they called Naveen on their phone, someone from the local local language spoke to him, spoke on the phone and told the family that he is no more. So they couldn't believe initially because there was language barrier, there was communication barrier. Until and unless the Chief Secretary of Karnataka confirmed the news, the family were not ready to accept that it was not Naveen is what they were saying initially. But right now the Chief Minister also has spoken to the family and said the government is with them and will do anything to make sure that the family is taken care of and the body will be brought back as soon as possible. The Chief Minister has also spoken to MEA officials as well as to the PM office that considering this is the first time this has happened, they need all support from the union government too.
Nagarjun, have you been able to speak to anyone related to young Naveen in terms of the family? Because we're getting in visuals from his hometown right now, you know, distressing visuals there. There's clearly, there's frustration, there is anger, all of that combined in what we're witnessing in Ukraine. Have you been able to speak to anyone at all?
Preeti, absolutely. The family is in a shock right now. Imagine their kid was somewhere else, thousands of kilometers away in a foreign country, and now this tragedy has happened. They were not available on the phone considerably because they are in a shock state. They are not willing to accept the tragedy that has occurred right now, and considerably we know that it will take a day or two for the news to sink in. So at this point of time, they were unwilling to talk, even talk to the press because they were in a state of shock right now. But however, we are trying to get in touch, at least to Naveen's friends, their neighbors or faraway relatives to get more information. But the close family, the father and the close relatives are in a state of shock right now, are not in a space to talk to the media.
Completely understandable there, Nagarjun reporting. Like I said, the face of the humanitarian crisis which is taking place, India's face, young Naveen, 21-year-old, from Bengaluru, from Karnataka, from the Haveri district, from a very small town there. And that would be possibly so many students coming in from these very small towns, trying to make their MBBS dreams possible in Ukraine, stuck in various corners. This is a huge tragedy. The first fatality or the casualty that India has actually suffered in the face of this young 21-year-old.